Hello everyone, welcome back to Chinmoy's Biology channel. So today we are here back with a brand new episode of breathing and respiration, and this is the first lesson of your CBSE 11 biology. So let's get started without further delay, and it will be a very interesting topic, so don't skip the video in between. Watch till the end. If you are having any queries, any doubts, you can ask me at the end of the lesson in your comment box. Okay, so let's get started. So here comes our lesson, breathing and exchange of gases. So first we will stress on respiratory organs, then we will discuss about the mechanism of breathing today. Now in the next classes we will be discussing about the exchange of gases, transport of gases, regulation of respiration and disorders of respiratory system. So it's a huge lesson and we are going to divide it into small parts which will make our learning process easier. So let's get started. As you have read earlier that oxygen is utilized by organisms indirectly and breaking down for the simple molecules like glucose and amino acids, fatty acids, etc. to derive energy to perform certain activities in our body. Whereas carbon dioxide, which is harmful, is also released during the above catabolic reactions. So this catabolic reactions in our body, they are from breaking down of certain substances in the body which are releasing carbon dioxide and is harmful for our body. So it is therefore evident that oxygen has continuously being provided to the cells, and carbon dioxide produced by the cell has to be released out. So oxygen is required by the cell for certain performing of certain activities inside the cell, whereas carbon dioxide, which is produced during the catabolic reactions, has to be exhaled out or removed out from the body. Okay. So this process of exchange of O2 from the atmosphere with carbon dioxide produced by the cell is called breathing. So what is breathing? The process of exchange of O2 from the atmosphere and CO2 produced within the cells is called breathing. Now commonly known as respiration. Is it clear? Now place your hand on your chest. So everyone, when you are studying, just place your hand on your chest. You can feel the chest is moving up and down. You know that this is due to breathing. Now, how do we breathe? The respiratory organs and the mechanism of breathing are described in this chapter. So first, let us discuss about the respiratory organs of other organisms as well. So mechanisms of breathing, they may vary among different groups of animals depending on their habitat. So what is habitat? On the surrounding they are surviving is the habitat. So the respiratory organ is dependent on the habitat as well as the levels of organization. So levels of organization, that they are invertebrata, vertebrata, they are arthropods, they are mollusks, they are annelids. What are they? So on that classification of levels of organization also, their respiratory organs are modified, or they are like that produced. Okay. So lower invertebrates like sponges, coelenterates and flatworms, they are doing the exchange of oxygen and CO2 by simple diffusion. So these are the lower invertebrates. So these lower invertebrates are doing this exchange of O2 CO2 by simple diffusion. So from where the simple diffusion is happening? From their entire body surface. Okay. Now next comes the earthworm. Use their moist cuticle, that is their moist skin surface, that moist cuticle, and insects have a network of tubes called the tracheal tubes. So different types of organisms are having different types of respiratory organs. So this tracheal tubes in insects, what they are doing? They are transporting the atmospheric air within the body. Now comes specialized vascularized structures called gills. So gills are present in all aquatic animals, and that is branchial respiration. Is it clear? And they are used mostly in aquatic arthropods, mollusks, whereas vascularized bags like lungs, that is pulmonary respiration. So the respiration which is happening with the help of lungs is called pulmonary respiration. That are vascularized bags, so that we, the terrestrial organisms, all the terrestrial organisms, that is the land organisms, they do the exchange of gases with the help of lungs. And underwater animals, they are doing this with the help of gills. Okay. So next comes amongst vertebrates, fishes use gills, Whereas amphibians, reptiles, birds and mammals, they respire through lungs. So is it clear? So different types or categories or levels of organization are having different respiratory organs, which is also depending on their habitat as well. Okay, now we will move on to amphibians. So amphibians like frogs, they can respire through their moist skin, and that is called cutaneous respiration. So here only we have studied three types of respiration. First one is the bronchial respiration, second one is the pulmonary respiration, and third one is the cutaneous respiration. So cutaneous respiration through skin, pulmonary respiration through lungs, and bronchial respiration through gills. So it's clear to all of you now. Now we will move on to the human respiratory system. That is very important and we are going to study that only. So let us start with this human respiratory system. So we all know that when we are starting with human respiratory system, the first thing is the external nostril. So it is just located above the upper lips. Now comes the nasal chamber, through which we move on to the nasal passage, and the nasal chamber opens into the pharynx. So what is pharynx? It is a portion of which is common for the passage of both food and air. Okay, so the pharynx then opens into the larynx, through the larynx region to the trachea. So what is the larynx region? Larynx is a cartilaginous box which helps in the production of sound, and hence it is also called the sound box. Now during the swallowing, the glottis can be covered by a thin elastic cartilaginous flap which is called the epiglottis, okay, to prevent the entry of food from entering into the larynx. Okay, so the trachea, when we move on down from the larynx to the trachea is a straight line extending up to the mid thoracic cavity. Okay, so and then it divides at a level in the fifth thoracic vertebra into the right and the left primary bronchi. So this bronchi and trachea in the fifth thoracic vertebra we will read afterwards. First let us study something about this nasal chamber or nasal passage. Now here comes the nasal chamber. So I have taken two different diagrams. So in the first one, let us see, this is the oral cavity. I have told that above the lips is the nasal cavity. So this one is the nasal cavity with a pair of nostrils. So here it moves and it is having nasopharynx, oropharynx and hypopharynx. So pharynx is again divided into three parts: naso, oro and hypopharynx. Now when we move down, we see here is this is also a part of pharynx. So here we will get the larynx part, which is called the voice box, down to which is the esophagus is moving down, and here the trachea is moving. So it is, you can see the cartilaginous ring like structure of the trachea. Okay, so here only we are having the epiglottis as well, which is when we are swallowing the food, the flap will fall on that larynx part so that the food should move to the esophagus and not to the trachea. Okay, so that part common we should be very aware when we are eating, right? So that is a part. This is the anatomy of pharynx we have seen. So if we want to go a bit detail in this nasal chamber structure, here nasal vestibule is there. Here you are having sinus, you know that you are having headache, sinus pain, and also this is sphenoid sinus, it's over here. Okay, so nasopharynx is this region is nasopharynx. Now here the superior turbinate, middle turbinate and inferior turbinate, and this is the sphenoid sinus and this is the frontal sinus. Okay, so when we are having just behind the nose, near the head region, we will have a pain. So that is the frontal sinus pain we are having. And in the back here, we are having the sphenoid sinus. So when there is a blockage, when there is not a proper flow of air inside that part, or rather the sinus is getting infected, we will have sinus problems, right? So now we will move on to the tracheal part and how the trachea divides into bronchi and to the alveoli. So let us move on to that part. That is the full respiratory tract. So we should know. Now we know about the nasal chamber, and now we are back with this part where we have told that the trachea is a straight tube extending to the mid-thoracic cavity. You can see in the diagram here it is extending towards the mid-thoracic cavity, and at the level of the fifth thoracic vertebra to right and left it is dividing into each bronchi. Okay, each bronchi undergoes repeated divisions to form secondary and tertiary bronchioles. Okay, so they are dividing into secondary and tertiary bronchioles, thin terminal bronchioles, and the trachea, the primary, the secondary, the tertiary bronchi, they are supported by incomplete cartilaginous rings. Okay, so they are all supported by bronchi, bronchioles. They are all supported by cartilaginous rings. Okay, so each terminal bronchi gives rise to very thin, irregular walled, vascularized bag-like structures called alveoli. So what you are seeing here, these all are vascularized bag-like structure called alveoli. Okay, so these are all bag-like structures called alveoli. The branching network of bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli comprise the lungs. So we have two lungs which are covered by a double-layered membrane pleura. Okay, so it is covered by a membrane pleura. So this is the membrane pleura. And we have seen that there is a pleural fluid in between them. So in this is a double membrane pleura. Inside there is in this region there is a pleural fluid. What is the function of pleural fluid? As all other fluids in our body, it also reduces the friction on the lung surface, and the outer pleural membrane, we know the outer pleural membrane, it is in close contact with the thoracic lining, whereas the inner pleural membrane is in contact with the lung surface. So the outer pleural membrane is contact with the thoracic cavity, and the inner pleural membrane is in contact with the lung surface. So is it clear to all of you now? Now the part starting with the external nostrils up to the terminal bronchioles constitute of the conducting part. So there are parts of this respiratory system, whereas alveoli and their ducts form the respiratory or the exchange parts. Is it clear? So two parts. First one is the conducting part. Okay, and the second part where the part from the outside the air is being conducted to inside of the lungs is the conducting part, and it is very easy. And the alveoli and their ducts where the respiratory exchange is happening, that part is called the exchange part. It's clear. So the conducting part transports the atmospheric air to the alveoli and clears it from the foreign particles, humidifies, and also brings the air to the body temperature. And the exchange part is the site of actual diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and the atmospheric air. Clear now? Now we will move on to the next part, right? So the lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, which is automatically airtight chamber. We know that the thoracic chamber is it is an airtight chamber. It doesn't have any leakage and all. The thoracic chamber is formed dorsally by the vertebral column, ventrally by the sternum, and laterally by the ribs on the lower side by the dome-shaped diaphragm. Okay, so the anatomical setup of lungs in thorax is such that any change in the volume of thoracic cavity will be reflected by the lung cavity. Okay, so any change in the thoracic cavity means in the thorax. So if we are inhaling, the thoracic cavity will enlarge, and if we are exhaling, it will shrink. So anything will be reflected in the lung cavity. So such an arrangement is essential for breathing, as we cannot directly alter the pulmonary volume. So respiration involves the following steps. So these steps are very important. What are the steps? Breathing or pulmonary ventilation, by which the atmospheric air is drawn in and carbon dioxide rich alveolar air is released out. So first important step Atmospheric air is drawn in and carbon dioxide rich air is released out. Now, diffusion of O2 and CO2 across the alveolar membrane. So, this is in this alveoli, the O2 and CO2 exchange will be happening. So, that is the across the alveolar membrane O2 CO2 exchange is happening. Okay. Now, transport of gases by blood, diffusion of O2 and CO2 between blood and tissues, utilization of oxygen by the cells for catabolic reactions, and resultant release of carbon dioxide. So this is all about the following steps of respiration, and this in chapter 12, the cellular respiration we have dealt with. So I'll also once again I'll tell you the cellular respiration. Okay, so we will move on to this mechanism of breathing in the next class, because today we have done a bit of introduction. In the next class we will do mechanism of breathing, as well as we will also do the respiratory volumes and capacities. Okay, is it clear? So to know all the respiratory volumes and capacities, to know the mechanism of breathing, you should stay tuned. You should subscribe to my channel and stay updated with all the episodes which I am posting. Okay, so stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to share it with your friends. Thank you. Thanks a lot for watching.